Hey, it's Terry Gorry, and this is the Irish Law and Small Business podcast. One of the most powerful tools you can use in your business, if you have a small business or indeed if you have a big business, is the power of story, the power of storytelling. Everybody loves a story. Since we were kids, we've been fascinated with Once Upon a Time and bedtime stories and so on. But even nowadays, when you get older, movies, books, companies, the story of companies, the story of brand and so on is incredibly powerful, incredibly important, because we all relate to the underdog. We all like to see conflict and the overcoming of difficulties and conflict, because we can relate to that. We can relate to failure. We can relate to conflict and difficulties in our life, and we like to see other people overcoming conflicts, overcoming difficulties in their lives, because it gives us not just encouragement, but it allows us to make sense of our life. If we are relying on facts or data alone, it's virtually impossible to persuade anybody to take action or to do what we want them to do. If, on the other hand, you are a small business owner and you're trying to build your business or build a brand, then story is a great way to do it, because our brain is hardwired for story, and we retain story much better than we retain data. You're not going to bore people into submission. You're not going to pummel them over the head with data alone, because it won't work. But story will. Story allows us as people to make sense of our life, and no two persons' story is the same. We all have different stories. Each person's story, each business story is unique. If I'm a solicitor or if I'm an accountant or a tax consultant, then what I do in terms of my skill and my professional training and so on is pretty much similar to other solicitors, for example. If I'm a tax consultant or an accountant, precisely the same situation exists. How do I differentiate myself, though, from my competitors, for example? I do it with story, because we all have a different story. We've all overcome difficulties to get where we are, and people like story. People are hardwired for story from a very early age. They say that there's three ways of persuading. One is with rhetoric and data alone. And data, then, you're asking people to lead to a deductive conclusion. In other words, here's the data, and the conclusion that you must draw, the inference you must draw is this. But we know that when the data is being spoon-fed to us, the likelihood is that negative data is not in the picture. We're not being told about the negative stuff. A second way to try to persuade is through coercion. This is a form of bullying or abuse or seduction. It uses plenty of emotion, but it lacks the data, and it's only short term. People will only be bullied or coerced or abused or persuaded in this way over a short period of time. Story, though, on the other hand, story takes the emotion from the coercion piece and takes the data from the rhetoric, deductive reasoning piece, and allows the person to make sense of what you're telling them. So your story is absolutely powerful, and it is compelling, and it plays or should play a massive role in your business, in developing, growing your business, in acquiring clients, and in your own brand building. There's four elements of a good story. Firstly, there's conflict or trouble and strife. Secondly, where's the underdog? Ideally, you or your client should be the underdog. Three, you shouldn't star yourself. It's not an autobiography. So don't talk about your university years, for example. Tell the story of how an inspirational professor may have opened your eyes to some profound truth. Make the professor the star and you are the lucky bystander. So don't make yourself the star. And then the fourth element of it is, what do you want the reader or listener to do after they've heard your story? What kind of story would trigger that action in that particular person? That's the question you need to ask yourself. So generally there's some sort of 3 or 4 or 5 stages in a good story. You've got an inciting incident, you have conflict, you have complications, then you have some sort of a crisis, and then you have a climax and you have a resolution. One of the most popular videos that I've put on my YouTube channel, and which has resonated greatly with people over a period of time, is a video that I made called My Origin Story. This is the story of how I basically started off and lost everything, and that was my conflict or my inciting incident, as it were, when I lost everything, and then my back was to the wall, and I went back to college and studied law and became a solicitor and so on. But obviously my story is not one of seamless unhindered progress or success. My story has had plenty of ups and downs. It's had conflict, and it's a video called My Origin Story. You'll find it on my YouTube channel. But the point is that people relate to other people's difficulties, other people's stories. Why? Because they themselves face difficulties, their own particular unique difficulties in their life. We all have a story. We all have a unique, compelling story. And if you want to persuade, if you want to influence, if you want to grow your business, then the story that you tell about yourself, or the story that you tell about your business, is one that is something that can be very, very compelling, very powerful in the growth of your business. Anyway, hope you enjoy this video. If you do, I'd appreciate if you gave it the thumbs up down below, and you may be interested in subscribing to my YouTube channel. Thanks a lot.